Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Telemaker Review. Hope you're all well. A little bit of the house build process there. The main two of the three main parts are done. So, well, yeah, about halfway. Well, yeah. So the walls and the roof, and the roof is all framed. We did it in metal, and then we just got to put up the roofing material, and then the ceiling, and finish the we call it Maya over here. I don't even know what the English language name for it is. It's the mesh that you use to reinforce concrete. So it's for the floor, 20 centimeters of concrete. And then that is my principal contract finalized. And then there's with the bathrooms put in as well. And then there's some subcontracting as well. So the tiling the floor, it will probably cost me about $600 in labor. But I mean, all in, I'm probably going to have a complete 1,000 square foot home, like more like 1,800 square feet with the balcony space for little under 30 grand Canadian, which would be about 22,000 US. Really kind of amazing, actually. And then I heard from the Native Association today, and I got the go ahead to do the tourism. And I heard from municipality, and they're going to redo the road almost all the way up to the reserve. It's just like I'm sitting at a slot machine, and every time I pull the arm, like 4 sevens pop up. It's, I mean, I'm going to knock on wood here. I'm not a superstitious guy, but, and I'm not trying to make anybody who's going through a difficult time, feel bad or anything, but, things are going, pretty good here. There's also like some kind of like massive cleanup going on the mountain. I think that all of the sort of criminal activity here is going to stop. And there's a lot of people on the mountain, they're being rousted. Cops will show up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they want to know who's living in a certain house. And they'll just knock on the door and then walk right into the house. Now, I should say that the police over here are extremely respectful of people. Like, they won't even come on your property if, you're not already designated like a serious criminal or something. But there's definitely been like an escalation in policing. And it's quite something to see, man. Like, I mean, it's really something to witness. Kind of remarkable, actually. And so I got all these things, I got my wife has her interview on Wednesday. We have to go to the city of Limon, which is the most dangerous city in Costa Rica. Batan is the most dangerous town, but the most dangerous city is Limon. And she has to do a spousal interview with the Ministry of Immigration. Apparently it's to find out whether it's a real marriage or just a marriage of convenience to get citizenship. Wait till they interview me. There'll be no doubt. But I have to say, this house build, Stephen has redeemed himself, man. And I guess, this is his forte. He builds houses, right? He's done about a half dozen of these prefab houses in his life. He's about 38 years old. 36 or 38, I don't know. Something like that. But yeah, 38, I think. And I'm just in a very happy space, folks. There's a huge movement going on now in the consulting field. You can see it on LinkedIn. You can see it on Indeed. There is a lot of the companies are decentralizing now. So, and this isn't a product of COVID. This is like another. Now, I should be very clear about this. This is, if you're Canadian or American and you've been working in high technology for the last 20 years, you're probably noticing a shrinking job market. And I can tell you why. The reason is that the job they're paying you $110 an hour to do in San Francisco or Menlo Park, where Facebook started, is just the work is still there. It's just that there's people in the world now, the education level's caught up. There's a lot of like digital nomads now, people with credentials, like with master's degrees in computer science, PhDs, living out of a backpack and traveling with a $2,000, $3,000 notebook computer and picking up these coding gigs and, coding for 3 months and making $35,000. No income tax. I think as an American citizen, even if you're living abroad, you are beholden to pay income tax in the United States. And I think the United States is the only country in the world that does that. Only country. But I think you have to make over 70,000 US. So I mean, if you code for 3 months and you make 35,000, and you're living in Airbnbs, man, I mean, you can live on that for almost 2 years if you're a single man, 28, 32 years old. And there's a lot going on, man, that you just don't see if you're hunkered down in the United States or Canada or Australia or New Zealand or the UK or France or Germany or the Netherlands or Sweden or Portugal or Italy. The West, the collective West. But I tell you, man, this millennial and Gen Z generation, they're footloose. I mean, they're all over the world. They're global. They get their educations, and I think this has become like a rite of passage for them. A lot of them end up in Costa Rica. A lot of those like Bitcoin exchanges are set up down here, and they work off of notebook computers. They may have their servers back in the US, but they can log into the servers and maintain them from anywhere in the world with a Citrix connection or a secure virtual private network. And what I'm saying is that, I mean, there's all kinds of work, man. When you're out in this world, now, it's not the 110 an hour anymore. So they might have to pay a senior technical writer 110 an hour in Silicon Valley. And that would get you like, in San Francisco, that would get you like a bachelor apartment. And, you'd have enough money to eat. And that, that's $220,000 a year. But remember, the government's coming in and taking a significant amount from taxes. And then you got your rent and your cost of living and everything. So this is an extension of the plan to, so it started with the manufacturing base. Okay? And that happened through free trade, which happened in basically between the first free trade agreement between Canada and the United States, and then the entry of Mexico. I think that was all between 88 and 92. And that sort of took out all of the manufacturing. Now a lot of the technology it's going global. And I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. What I'm trying to point out is that what might be bad for you if you're living in Toronto is good for someone like me living where and how I live. Is it fair? I don't know what fair is anymore. I'm not sure I understand that term. Is it justified? Well, I'm going to weigh in on this. I definitely do not think that the West deserves this treatment. I think it's scapegoating. And I think it's scapegoating for the power brokers and all of the people. I mean, like, I've been over this before on my podcast. You know, it's not that I'm against reparations per se. And I know I just said something controversial there. And here I'm talking about reparations for slavery in the United States, although I think that would be a first where any country has paid reparations. But I don't think it's fair to lump it on to a group of people. I think 1% of like white European Christians owned slaves in the United States. About 100% of the Jews in the United States at that time, very high number, if not 100, it's like 95, 98%. This is all documented. They owned slaves because the Abrahamic scripture aligned with the Jews allows, their God allows them to have slaves. In fact, tells them the whole world will be their slaves when the Messiah comes. But my definition of reparations and justice would be a thorough forensic audit of the existing business records that go all the way back to the slave trade. And they have those records somewhere. I promise you they do. Okay? And get it all nailed down. Find out who the shipping companies were that were picking the slaves up in Africa. Find out what became of those companies over the last 300 years. Where did the money go? Because that money would have seeded something. And the characteristics of nefariousness that have dominated the advancement of corporate interest in the last 300 years have not abated. If anything, they've grown. So if you were a piece of shit fucking son of a bitch 300 years ago in the slave trade, probably your descendants are higher up even in the shit hierarchy, and they're billionaires now. Find out what happened to all the East India Company money. Where did that go? Do it proper. Don't just use it as a politician like Gavin Newsom to create more divide between two large blocks of people, black and white. The black living, never experiencing slavery, and the white living, never owning slaves. Right? What are you going to do? So this is the way the economy is going, and nothing can stop it, So I don't know what's going to become of the West. I think I have no idea. No idea. I know that there's no single force that can replace the West. I've been over this before on the Talamanca Review. The Indians are nowhere near ready for global leadership. The Chinese will never be ready for global leadership. They're two of the largest and most powerful economies in the world. Brazil will never be ready for global leadership. Right? Who does that leave? Right? Russia? Russia will never be accepted as a global leader. You know, it's a very unique culture. It's a strongman culture. It's a warlord culture. They call them oligarchs, but that's basically a warlord. A warlord in history is a person who carves out a certain dominion inside an established dominion, and then finds an amicable and relationship with the greater dominion that the oligarch or the warlord exists within. This is the way China used to be run. In many ways, if you study the triads closely, it still runs that way. So where the West can or will go, I don't know. We're definitely not ready to be led by a World Economic Forum. But if you're paying attention, we seem to be moving more and more toward this, I don't know what to call it, this digital cage, you know? I mean, I can already imagine the nightmare that life is going to be with a digital currency. And sometimes I think that, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll run tests to gauge the public reaction, okay? So I would say that one of the big tests that was run was the trucker convoy in Ottawa in 2022. By the way, the verdicts just came in on that. I think Tamara Lynch and Barber, the other guy, I think was his name, they got like a year and a half. Like their sentences were basically a year and a half. All to be served outside of jail, home arrest and probation and stuff like that. But it was an unbelievably brutal trial. You don't really want to get into trouble for anything unless you're capable of representing yourself. And very few people can do that. Very few people. I can do it, but I'm very few people. I can write books. I can move someplace, learn the language, and live in it. I'm not a normal bear. This should be abundantly clear to you by now. I'm not a super smart guy. But what I have found in life is that when you need to do something, it's easy to do. The pressure of having to do it, not giving yourself, like if you made a plan and said, oh, I'm going to, pack up and I'm going to go move to Costa Rica like Bruce did, except I'm not going to cold plunge the way Bruce did. I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to spend 90 minutes on Duolingo, and I'm not going till I speak fluent Spanish and this, and your motivation will wane. It's better to put yourself into circumstances in life where you sink or you swim. And I was raised this way, and being ejected from my home at 16 just reinforced it. And so it's normal for me. So I don't really get too worked up about it. But the world is changing so much, man. I just cannot believe what's going on around me. And so if they pull high tech out of the West as well, they might. They're they're gonna leave offices there, because the West will still be a very powerful lobbying center. You know a country's not finished if Israel is counting on said country to keep it whole. So by that alone, we can conclude, deduce, that America is not finished yet. But I think what is contractually expected of America over the next 5 to 10 years, and when I say contractually expected, I mean you're not going to find anything that's been signed. These are all backroom deals. But I think America will be spent by 2030 or 2035, and you're going to be at cinder forests waiting for the earth to remineralize and grow again. You know, that's what it's going to be like. And I don't know what that's going to. I don't know what's going to happen then, because America and Canada and the first world countries are very different countries than most places in the world. There are still many places in this world you can go, buy an acre of land, build a house, and nobody's going to bother you. It definitely will not be in an urban area. All the urban areas are dominated by code, building code, and justifiably so, because I mean when you're building a building in a city, you get something wrong, there's going to be collateral damage. If you get the electrical wrong and you start a fire, you're going to burn down the buildings beside you, maybe behind you, maybe more. So I'm not saying I'm anti-building inspector. I'm not, because building inspectors are needed. What I'm saying is you got to go all the way. You got to go onto wild land, build a home. If they don't have electrical poles, if they don't have electrical lines running to where you're living, you got to spend 10 grand and get a decent alternative energy system. And you got to set yourself up with some connectivity and find work. And I cannot begin to tell you how prevalent this is going to be in the next few years. You're going to see more and more people doing this. I mean, there's loads of millennials doing it. Loads. Loads of Gen Z doing it. You know? Just going out into the world. And it's a diaspora. Really is what it is. It's a diaspora. And it's going to change the world profoundly. It is going to profoundly change the world. Because the mixing of people at this level has been needed for a long time. And I think people mixing is very good. Okay? I'm very happy that I grew up in a multicultural society. I'm very happy I spent the bulk of my adult life from about 20 to 49, 50, 30 years in Toronto, the largest city in Canada, and one of the cities, if not the city, with the most languages spoken in it from people all over the world. It was a very unique way to live. And I'm a big fan of mixing people together, and multiculturalism, because what it does is it takes down the old culture. And if you've been listening closely to the Talamanca Review, I apply this same philosophy to my spiritual life. It's like I look at everything and I say, okay, like what works? You know, and what is the common thing being said? You know, what is the similarity between the Christian Trinity and the Hindu Trinity of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu? Why do these trinities of gods or expressions of God exist, and what does it mean? What does the Trinity mean? And then you figure it out universally, not culturally. And the universal answer is the true answer. The cultural answer is part of the answer, but you don't have it until you own it. And you don't own it until you can talk about it in your own language. So, but I must say, as I watch this all unfold, as someone born and raised in the West, I do find it really ugly what's being done to the country I was raised in, especially Canada. It's, oh my God, folks. I mean, I realize Canada is not the sexiest news cycle in the world to follow, but oh my God, if you can just stay abreast of what's happening in Canada, what you're going to see is what would have happened to the United States had Harris and Waltz gotten in. Because these wackadoos are just, you know. And this, of course, is the Kalergi plan. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. Kalergi. The Kalergi plan is another vindictive Jewish war by deception bullshit operation. And that seems to be happening, in the same way that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion seem to be happening. And what amazes me is that there are Jews who can look at this and call themselves intellectually honest and not call it out. Okay? Like, again, I go back to that classic example when Lex Friedman had that history professor whose expertise was conspiracy theory and secret societies on for a nearly 4-hour podcast. And they finally get to the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, and he said, the prevailing academic opinion is that some of this stuff had been written in France, but the bulk of it was amalgamated and put together as an intelligence report of some form by the, I think they were called the, hang on a sec, I'm not going to look it up. I'm not going to say it if I don't know, but I think it was like the Osaka or something like that. But it was essentially the Secret Service or the intelligence agency of the Tsar of Russia. And he put it together in about 1910. And lo and behold, by 1917, everything that was in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion was taking place in a violent Jewish communist revolution, which is what Hitler saw over in Germany. You got to wonder how we arrive at the way we're going to teach history. And I think that this is all just done by control. It's done by controlling your income, your job, your title. This institutionalized system that we've created is extremely vulnerable to manipulation and control. And we're starting to see that now. This, by the way, if you haven't read it, is the basic theme of The Light of Darkness. You may have to dig a little bit or think a little bit to put it together. I think it's fairly straightforwardly told, but the general theme of The Light of Darkness is that we have been done in by system thinking. Now, system thinking, which is basically as any system you set up, has a series of regulations and protocols. And that's it. Okay, so it's like this, and all of these systems have been created by writers. And they're essentially a set of regulations and codes. Everything. Okay, so you look at the system of education, the curriculum is written. It is decided what people are going to study. Well, how is it decided? And why has it been so deliberately denigrated or degenerated in the last 75 years since 1950? It's just been going down and down and down and down. If you were to get in a time machine and go back to like 1950, you would probably find that most high school graduates in 1950 had a higher rate of general literacy than most undergraduates in university now in the first world, meaning they communicated and they wrote better. Their grammar was clearer, their expression was clearer, they had a more mastery of the English language. Ergo, they were more literate. So if we could produce that in 17-year-old kids graduating grade 12, you got to ask yourself what happened. You know? At every stage of this so-called wonderful evolution of the world, there have been things that we have created which nobody wants to talk about, which almost cancel out all the so-called progress. For example, cancer. They now say that 1 out of every 2 people is going to get a cancer diagnosis in the first world. 1 out of every 2 people. Do you know that up until World War II, cancer was so rare they didn't keep statistics on it? Very few people died of cancer. It was like super rare, like Lou Gehrig's disease or something. Now it's through the roof. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with all of these electromagnetic fields. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with all the chemicals in our food. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with the unbelievable vaccine regimen. Jack Kruse goes on and on about that, but you know, it reminds me of a title of a Brad Pitt movie from about 10 years ago. It's a very different kind of Brad Pitt movie. Very gritty. And it's called Killing Them Softly. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth seeing. I highly recommend it. Killing Them Softly. And it's just, that's what they're doing. They're killing us softly. And you can tell people about it. I mean, there's 1,000,001 Substacks. But what's preventing the human organization from toppling this? Because nobody's free anymore. Because anybody can be destroyed. Because the way they've set the system up is to fulfill your life cycle, you have to have uninterrupted income for about 25, 30 years to pay off your mortgage. And then once you sell your house, if it's even your property by the time you sell your house now, that's your life savings that is going to complement your, whatever your retirement is, your Social Security or whatever, and you're going to live on that. Well, that model's completely broken now, too. And people wonder why the young people are so crazy. Because they don't see a future. That's why. There you go. You asked, I told you. They're crazy because they don't see a future. Why are they thinking so radically? Why are they so revolutionary? Because they don't see a future. And that's been deliberately robbed from them. And the occulting of that fact by their grandparents in the baby boom is shameful. Fucking shameful. Okay? You always want to pass a better world to your children than the one you were born into. You know? Unless you're a nomadic native people in North America pulling camp with the seasons. You know? Throwing all your deer hide skins on horseback and traipsing for 1,000 kilometers to get to a warmer area to live for 6 months, rebuilding your teepees in your community of 1,500 people or however many people you are. You know, if you're not nomadic, then everything you do is building and building and building and building, and the future generations inherit it. And that's, I think, part of the reason why what's happening in the West is so frustrating, because our ancestors built these roads. Our ancestors built all of the infrastructure in the cities. You know? Natives weren't doing that, except for maybe the Mayans. You know, perhaps the Aztecs in the heart of Guatemala, but, you know, for the most part, no. Right? And now it's all just being handed over to people who don't have any skin in the game, who don't have any generations in the country. And if you find it offensive as an American and a Canadian, imagine what it feels like being part of a long-standing culture like Britain, or God forbid, Italy. which is at its wit's end with these African immigrants. That, I mean, you're dealing with about a 75, 80 IQ. That's borderline Down syndrome. These people can't do anything. Okay? IQ, by the way, is not so much a genetic determiner. It's a lot of times it's because the mind hasn't been exercised. And so if you come from a non-intellectual culture where people build mud huts and hunt and maybe sow a few crops here and there, well, then you're not used to thinking. And it's very hard to survive in a society in which predominantly the economy moves on thinking. But yeah, there's a lot of work out there now for a fully remote technical writer, man. And you can see the whole market changing. The methods of payment now. You can get paid by Stripe, Venmo, PayPal, Bitcoin, and I'm talking. So the way they're setting it up, one of the industries that nobody talks about in the alternative media that has gone completely unchecked for its role in the situation we now find ourselves in is hands down the human resources industry. The human resources industry is absolutely diabolical. First of all, by the laws of English language, you shouldn't be even able to use the term human resource. It is one of the grossest objectifications of the human being ever put into language, human resource. What kind of resources do I need for my house? Well, I need the concrete frame, the prefabricated concrete frames to build the walls. I need metal to build the roof. You get what they're resources, right? Like concrete, wood, metal, human. I need people to build the house. I don't call them human resources. I call them Stephen and Annibal and Albin and Danny. But human resources has set this whole thing up. Now, I've seen this go through several phases now. And I think generationally, and because I'm still working, I'm in a perfect position to speak about this. Somebody a little bit older who's retired wouldn't understand, and somebody who's just starting out, younger, they wouldn't understand. But the Gen Xers are just, boom, right in the middle of this. So around the year 2000, full-time jobs kind of became more obsolete. And contracting became very, very big. Okay? Now, I've been a contractor my whole life. I very rarely work jobs. Very rarely. And when I finished my first job, I worked there about 2 years. I went directly to contracting. I opened up a corporation and I went directly to contracting. Now, when I started in 99, the hourly rate you were given as a contractor was the same number as what the annual salary would be. So if the salary for an intermediate technical writer in 1999 was 45,000 Canadian, 26 years ago, then if I went to that same company and I worked as an intermediate technical writer for 6 months on contract, it would be normal in that climate to pay me $45 an hour. $45 an hour. Which, when you do the math, if you were to work a whole year at the contract rate, you would actually double the amount of money that the full-time employee made. Now, there were certain benefits to the corporations in terms of severance pay, dental plans, and various benefits which did not have to be offered to contractors. But that's how it started. It was basically double the salary, which would be equivalent to the annual salary number in thousands of dollars would be the hourly rate of pay in dollars. So a $65,000 job was $65 an hour. That's the way it worked. And that lasted till about 2010, 2011. And then the contract market started to contract, and you could see very clearly that the larger economy had sort of orchestrated this. And the contract market was created to get around labor law. Okay? That's why it was created. So free trade was created to get around unions. Okay? Because, I mean, if you go back as far in the political game as I do, in terms of political consciousness, watching what's going on, paying attention to it, and asking intelligent questions. You know, I've been in this game about, 45 years. I'm 59 now, and I would say I was politically literate by about 15. And then I had the old man to ask questions about, and he would always give you to the old man's credit, he would always give you the unvarnished truth. You asked him a question, he would give you the Machiavellian answer. Why are we going to war in Central America, Dad? Why are we doing what we're doing in Nicaragua? Oh, well, they want the land and the resources there. They don't like the government. They're trying to stop the spread of communism. But basically, we're in there to just loot them. He would just tell you straight out. And then I would think to myself, how do you know this and live with it? But I wasn't old enough to understand how the world works, right? Now, ultimately, I could never live with it. Never live with it, but some people can. My brother's the same way. They just say, this is the way the world works. I'm not going to change anything. I better take care of me and mine. And that basically explains the entirety of the problem we're in now in 2025. The only people really willing to fight at this point are the people who have nothing. That's why they're fighting. That's why they're all like 35 and under. Tired of living in fucking apartments or sleeping on a floor or sharing 8 to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment in San Francisco, each paying $300-400 a month to tally it up to the total rent, hoping they don't get caught for overcrowding the apartment by their landlord. But all the people who have something, the people who have their house, who have their 401k, who've gone through the shit, gotten out, they don't want to go back in and help the young people. They pretend they are. This is the whole shtick of the Democrats. We're going to make America a livable country. Well, I mean, between Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, you had about 21 of the last 35 years to try and do that. And in fact, you did the exact fucking opposite. Right? Republicans come in and say, well, we're gonna bust some shit up, man. We're gonna go to war. And then they do their thing and they go out and they loot like Vikings. And that's all it is. Yeah, don't regard any of these soldiers as honorable people. I like them. I like Sean David Ryan. I like all Michael Yon, the ex-Green Beret, who's doing it. They're very informative podcasts once they wake up. And they have an insight that's very personal because they've lived through the other side of a conflict by being one of the hostile forces in the foreign country under flag. And then they wake up spiritually and they say, what did I do? But most of these people they're just fucking murderers. No, don't put these people up on a pedestal. A Navy SEAL is just a murderer who can survive Hell Week. That's what they are. They're not fucking heroes. Listen to the interviews closely. When Sean Ryan has these Uber killers on, like the Delta Sergeant McAfee or whatever his name is, guy's just a killer. He's just a hired thunk. He's like what do they call that dude in Game of Thrones? The giant guy, the 6'6" guy, the Hound. Yeah, the Hound. It's just the Hound. It's just like the King's killers, right? The key to civilization is to get the best killers on your side. That's it. It's no more complicated than that. But I digress. So we're now in a situation where the elders don't want to help the young people. You know, there's, hey, pull your bootstraps up. You'll make it. No, you won't. Not unless you're completely wed to the machine. You're not going to make it. Unless you're a scumbag, a fucking corporate lawyer, or, you know, major, a chartered accountant in a major charting accounting firm like KPMG, or way up in the finance world, which are all intellectual versions of the Hound. Just another kind of killer, right? I'm just doing what's good for me and my family. That you can't really complain when your society is crumbling, because there's no unity. This is one of the reasons, or one of the ways in which they've done this, by creating this radical individuality that nobody wants to step out of. Okay, I got mine. Now, I'm a little bit like that now, too. I got mine. I got a second house being built. I got time to write books. I mean, who can even write now, let alone read? The survival mandate is so intense now. But we're far from done. We're far from done. And we're far from bankrupt. And the reason I say that we're far from bankrupt is, if what we're hearing from the Great Taking is true, they're going to pay off the debt with the savings of the Canadians, the Americans, the Australians. So basically, when you understand finance the way I understand it, this has just been an elaborate looting. Now the question is, who's been doing the looting? And why can't we find them, prosecute them, and either throw them in jail or execute them? Because these are really capital crimes. What do you think is proper punishment for looting $1 trillion from a national economy? I think if you're going to kill somebody for murdering somebody, you should kill somebody for looting $1 trillion. Right? But it all goes together now. And the reason it keeps working is everybody thinks they're going to win that lottery. Everybody thinks they're going to be that one of the 3% who get up to like $1 million a year with bonus as a trader for a hedge fund or a trader for a bank. You're going to be that guy. Your commissions are going to get you up to $1 or $2 million a year. System works. I worked hard and look what I've made of myself. Would you ever ask yourself what you've actually produced for society? The answer is nothing. Nothing. Every time money evaporates in the capital markets due to investment, meaning somebody games it with shorting it or this or that, even that guy from the Big Short movie, you know, played by Batman, Christian Bale, and he's this nerdy mathematician who figures out that the housing market is going to collapse because the bonds are shit. And even to make money on that, how many degrees of separation? And please don't think I'm becoming an extremist in my thinking by giving this example, but think about it carefully, okay? what we do for a living should benefit our society. It should benefit our society. If you're a house builder, you and your brothers and you work with an architect and you're independent house builders and you all make $100,000 a year and you're four brothers and that's what you do. You build custom homes. You can retire and say, man, I lived a decent life. I worked hard and I made money. And it's true. You can't do that if you're a money person. You just can't. I mean, that guy played by Christian Bale in The Big Short, how many degrees of separation is he from someone selling battlefield organs at the Russia-Ukraine border? They have tents there now harvesting organs and selling them to the international organ market. 40 grand for a kidney, blah, 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 blah. 100 grand for 2 healthy lungs, all kinds of young people dying there. Those organs are good. Right? It's just really kind of amazing how gruesome and full circle this economy has become. It's really, in a lot of ways, become the economy of hell. And here I am over here in the rainforest. Cold water shower every day, which I've grown to love. It's not cold like ice. It's just, room temperature water. Here I am showering in it and waking up every day and getting my podcasts done for the most part and getting my work done. And from where I'm sitting, everything is good. And I told you in the beginning of the podcast, a lot of that work is spreading out over the world now. I'm seeing it. I didn't finish my thought. So the HR companies came in and structured this buffer between the corporations and the labor they used. And technically, you were paid by the HR company that hired you to fulfill the contract at whatever client it was. Could be a bank, could be IBM, whatever. But the company you worked for has no legal liability towards you. It was all done at this mid-tier called the HR company. Now what you're seeing are these companies rising up. There's dozens of them on LinkedIn now. And they're specifically looking for people like me. Completely separated and detached remote workers who can go in and do 3 months here, 6 months here. And the pay is $50, $55, $65 an hour, which is a bit low for 2025 given the inflation since COVID. But what does it matter when you don't have a mortgage, when you don't have land taxes, when you don't have rent? What does it matter? I mean, do you realize pretty much every dollar I make is spendable? I don't have to save for anything. The only thing I should do is build up my food equity here a little bit better. And given that I'm on a carnivore diet now, that means keeping a fish pond, keeping chickens, and keeping pigs, and buying my beef because I will never in my life kill a cow. There's just something about an animal that big and majestic and passive and docile. I can't do it. Mid-sized creature like a goat, a lamb, a pig, I can do that. But I could never kill a cow. So I gotta buy my beef at the grocery store. Don't mind me, I'm just some guy on a Friday night talking into a microphone, trying to come up with a podcast, and just telling you what's going on over here and what I see going on over there, where most of my listeners, are living. And honestly, I don't know why I do this. I don't know why I oscillate between hardcore socioeconomic podcasting, Machiavellian realism, and then do blatantly spiritual podcasting. It's like a bipolarity in me or something. But the two things are connected, right? So the internal state we live in produces the external state, which is, I suppose, is the connective tissue between my political and spiritual penchants in podcasting. But tonight I felt like doing a political one. The Merging Dimensions redo was, whew, like that's one of the best podcasts I've done in several months. Really nailed that idea down so you can understand what we're going through. And you better start to understand it quite a bit, because this thing's coming online. We're in motion now, that we're in the transition now. So yeah, so what this new wave of headhunting is doing is it's geared specifically toward the digital nomad. And like I said, you don't even need a bank account, man. I mean, they'll pay you in PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, Bitcoin, whatever you want. It's almost like a reinvention of piracy. This whole pirate economy going on out there, because none of these digital nomads, like European, Canadian, Australian, none of them are contributing to the country back home. Because when you're living like in Canada and Australia, when you live outside the country 183 days a year, you don't have a tax liability. It's not like the United States. And that's another thing that goes against the stability of these first world nations, is that there's this huge brain drain, right? People going off and being digital nomads. Raving at the beach, raving in the jungle. Raving, man. Raving. Club music and MDMA, it's everywhere. I could drive for 3 hours and go to a rave tomorrow night in multiple locations in Costa Rica. Raving is huge now. Well, I don't have any idea what I'm going to title this. I'll think about that. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been a kind of an all-over-the-place Talamanca review, but I showed up, didn't I? Peace out.